Looks like that's everyone in from the waiting room. So, hi everybody, welcome to our second session on the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service and our uh, connection to the Climate Ready or Climate Insight Toolkit. Today we're going to be going over how you can use the Climate Insight Toolkit to identify potential climate change mitigation solutions for your infrastructure projects, and then connect the results from the Climate Insight Toolkit into a submission to the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service to receive some free expert support for your infrastructure project. So today I'm joined by Sherry Young from ICLEI, who's going to be presenting the Climate Insight Toolkit. Also joined by Kira, who is one of the portfolio managers along with myself at the Canadian Urban Institute implementing the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service. I can see Nathan is also here as well from ICLEI, and so the four of us are going to be able to show you how our two programs work together and answer any of your questions about how you can benefit from one or both of these programs. So I think we'll start off just with a quick overview of the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service for anyone who's unfamiliar, and then we'll go into the Climate Insight Toolkit to show you how those two work together. So the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service is a program that is being implemented by the Canadian Urban Institute with funding from Housing, Infrastructure and Communities Canada. The Canadian Urban Institute is a national platform, and our focus is on building communities with our policymakers, urban professionals, civic business leaders, community activists, and academics. We work on projects across the country that help make our communities and cities more livable. The Climate Ready Infrastructure Service specifically is focused on building communities and developing infrastructure with climate change in mind. We are connecting local governments with populations of about 30,000 or less with climate experts so that the local governments can integrate climate change mitigation or adaptation into their public infrastructure projects. We're helping local governments access expert advice for climate resilience and ensuring that with the budget that's given through our program, that infrastructure projects can gain access to future funding applications with the preliminary work that our program can enable. Ultimately, our goal is to help build long-lasting, future-proof infrastructure that is able to address and withstand the climate challenges of tomorrow. Our mission values are first to increase the capacity of infrastructure decision makers to include low-carbon climate resilience considerations in infrastructure projects across Canada, and we're looking to help small communities across Canada implement high-value local infrastructure improvements that can withstand those climate challenges. Some key program features, first and foremost, is that for local governments, there is no cost to participate. Funding through Housing, Infrastructure and Communities Canada helps pay for this program so that we can provide expert services for free. The expert support and guidance that you'll receive is based on a match that us at the Canadian Urban Institute will make between you and one of the experts on our roster. And through that match, you'll be able to receive expert advice on how to integrate climate change into your infrastructure projects. Our service is flexible, it's custom, and we offer bespoke project scoping so that whether you're at the very early concept stages or you're a little bit deeper into the project development, we can help provide some solutions and guidance that's tailored to your specific community and the climate considerations that matter for you. So let's quickly talk about project eligibility. We're mainly looking for communities of under 30,000 people to participate. There is a bit of an exception if you are an upper tier municipality or a regional municipality that has a population larger than 30,000. If your project is going to benefit and focus on delivery to a community of 30,000 people or less, but you're an upper tier or regional municipality, you're still eligible to participate. I'd encourage you to reach out to us or submit a service request through our website, and we can work on identifying how to make your project eligible for our services so that small communities and local governments within your region or upper tier municipality can benefit from the service. Our second criteria is that you're planning infrastructure or housing project in one of our eligible asset classes. The program covers a wide range of asset classes, including water systems, buildings and facilities, fleets, bridges, parks and trails, and more. Green infrastructure is also included as an asset class, and we understand that a lot of local governments are looking more and more to green infrastructure solutions and nature-based solutions to climate change problems. So all of those are definitely eligible. The last piece of our eligibility criteria is that the project is a real project, and we understand that by the project either having council approval or it being included in a multi-year capital plan. So if you meet those three criteria, please submit a service request and we'd be happy to get you hooked up with some free expert advice from one of our roster experts. In order to help you scope your project and maybe prioritize which of the many projects I'm sure that you have ongoing that would benefit most from the services of one of our roster experts, we're going to walk you through how you can use the Climate Insight Toolkit to find some preliminary solutions and maybe figure out which of your projects is best suited for our program. Once you've gone through the Climate Insight Toolkit, you've made a submission through climatereadycanada.ca, submitted a service request to get matched with one of our experts. Our team at the Canadian Urban Institute will match you with one of the experts, and from there, you can receive support directly from those experts. Us at the Canadian Urban Institute, our goal is to make sure that all of the administrative components, like developing the contract with the expert or developing the scope of work, are taken care of so that the entry and the barrier to entry is as low as possible for you to receive those benefits and services. Overall, the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service is a part of the broader Climate Toolkit for Housing and Infrastructure being implemented by Housing Infrastructure and Communities Canada. We're one of three resources that are supporting local governments and helping communities across the country meet Canada's National Adaptation Strategy and 2030 Emission Reduction Plan. The two other programs are the Help Desk, which is a contact service line within HICC that you can call to receive general guidance or have any questions that you have about climate change or climate change related to your specific community or infrastructure projects. You can get direct support over the phone. And the main focus of today's session is, of course, the Climate Insight Toolkit, where you can find data and information on how to build low carbon, climate resilient housing and infrastructure across Canada. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sherry, who is going to give us an overview of the Climate Insight Toolkit, and then we'll run through how you actually use the toolkit to find some climate mitigation solutions.
Great, thanks, Dan. As Dan mentioned, Climate Insight is part of the three pillars of the Climate Toolkit for Housing and Infrastructure that Housing and Infrastructure Canada has promoted to support communities to make decisions on climate and infrastructure in Canada and across Turtle Island. I assume you guys can see my screen okay? Yeah, thumbs up. Just share my screen. So this, so in order to see where to start, if you know you want to start addressing climate resiliency or climate mitigation in your community, we went through climate adaptation infrastructure options yesterday in yesterday's session, and today we'll be focusing on how to find some mitigation options to reduce your emissions and maybe some low carbon resilience and combine some resiliency options with some of your mitigation efforts. So if you aren't quite sure where to start, climateinsight.ca is the name of our platform. It is has kind of three main components to it. One of them is the main one here is to get guided assistance on a project, and we'll spend most of our time in that pathway here. There's a library if you just want to kind of look up and see what kind of information and resources are there. And I'll quickly touch on the maps, although our maps today, our maps are a bit more relevant for if you're looking for information about infrastructure that is already vulnerable to climate risks. The map is a bit more helpful, but it also has layers of infrastructure and social vulnerability factors. So I want to run through that really quickly today. Do we have municipalities on the call, and anybody want to take a look at volunteer their municipality so I can do a test run for a live municipality? You can either put it in the chat or unmute and shout out the name of your community. No one's being brave. Eva, was there a municipality on the on the registration list, or I could just focus on one that has a project. Okay. Oh, Montjoly. Okay, let's do Montjoly, Quebec, Montjoly. So first thing you do is you put the name of your community into the map, and it'll zoom in right away to the area of the map where your community is located. Now, what you'll see, this first layer here is a social vulnerability layer. And what it will help you to identify is the areas in your community that where residents may already be at risk to socioeconomic factors. So if you can see from this legend on the side here, the first layer that comes up is pedestrian cycling pathways, and we'll touch on that in a minute. That's these lines through here. There's anything that's registered with the open database of infrastructure is here on the map. So that's where, if you want more information on that, you can see our data sources and methodologies. But here we have some socioeconomic layers that shows that in these red areas are areas of high socioeconomic vulnerability, and in these blue areas it's a bit lower. So these are based on factors like income, residential instability, age, mobility, things like that. So that's what that first layer on the map is. If you come over here, you can take a tour or get some information on different layers of the map if you want to come back and look at it on your own. But this first layer will show you kind of time periods. You can choose a climate time period. So again, this is kind of just about hazards, what the change is, but it can also impact your energy efficiency if you know your heat's going to go up and you need to focus more on energy efficiency for some of your thermal or your cooling systems as well, right? So this kind of gives you some guidance if you would like a snapshot, or you can just look at the socioeconomic layers if you want to look at where people are in your community that are just have an overview of social vulnerability, or you can break it down to these different residential instability or situational vulnerability if you want to focus maybe on mitigation actions for rental units or lower income housing. So if we just say situational vulnerability, these are people who may or may not be able to, like they're elderly, or they might have some other situations, or residential instability. These are people who are at higher risk of residential instability. So maybe their house is in a great shape, maybe it's renting, maybe there's some other factors that make their residents at risk of socioeconomic factors. You can layer it with, if you go down here to these other climate factors, you can layer it with that residential instability with days with maximum temperature more than 30 degrees by clicking on that and then clicking on that layer. So if we know that you're at risk of heat or of flooding, that's what we do for hazard, but we're going to focus on heat today because that directly impacts your energy efficiency. We know that people in this area maybe need a program that focuses more on how to get energy efficient adaptation or heating and cooling regulated in that. So that's just a quick snapshot. If you're not looking at housing, if you're looking more at infrastructure in these areas, we do have layers of infrastructure you can kind of take a look at. As you can see, the pathways are there. If you're kind of focusing projects on wastewater and stormwater facilities, and you know your heat's going to go up, so you're going to have to make sure that your energy bills don't go up relative to heat, or you want to focus on energy efficiency at your wastewater and stormwater facilities, you can identify, yes, there are a few in this area, and heat will probably have an impact on those. So you can have a quick snapshot, maybe your recreational and sport facilities, maybe you have an arena that you want to do some energy efficiency on. Here, this looks like Centre de Découverte Zoom Nature. That must be an outdoor facility. That must be an outdoor facility. And I see Dan, we also, yeah, I will, I'll make sure I put maybe Nathan can put my contact information in the chat while I'm running through the presentation. But yeah, absolutely. So we're focusing on energy efficiency in this area. So if you had an arena, that might show up here if it's been reported in the open database of infrastructure. For the first time, we actually have low carbon infrastructure also identified on the map. So this is the first time we've kind of identified some of the energy efficiency things. So what we can look here is that looks like there are some charging stations. So if you wanted to make sure that those charging stations were efficient, it looks like there's some things in there if you wanted to address things around there. Yeah. nice work, charging stations that are reported in Montjoly. But that just to have an impression of what kind of infrastructure is in your area. So I'm going to quickly move away from here because it's not as in depth for the mitigation stuff, but we're going to pop over to the solutions finder now because we're going to look at some of the mitigation options for infrastructure in Montjoly. So we're in Quebec. And Dan, what's the population of Montjoly? Is it probably in this 5 to 25,000 area?
Sorry, it's below 5,000.
Oh, okay, below 5,000. So that means you definitely qualify for the CRIS program with Dan's program, and also that we'll just make sure that we focus on mitigation options that apply for your community. So yesterday we went straight into looking for the options, but today I want to walk you through a little bit about life cycle emissions, because here we actually have, if you want to learn a little bit more about how to integrate equity into your climate mitigation efforts, there's some information here. There's some information on training events and things like that. But where I want to focus right now is on this life cycle emissions piece, because it gives you an overview on emissions, infrastructure, and meeting your net zero targets. If you're not super familiar, it talks a little bit about the different scopes. If you've heard this, if you're not a climate specialist, this is your climate specialist. It'll tell you, give you some of the background. And if you don't have a climate specialist in your community, you can get an overview of what climate mitigation actions look like and kind of how they impact things. And there's an example here on embodied carbon and concrete and how different emissions reduction methods are impacted by that. So the other key thing that we have in this mitigation pathway is that you can, if you don't know your emissions off the top of your head, or if you're not sure who to ask for that, but you maybe have access to, you want to have an idea of what the mitigations are for your specific piece of infrastructure, or for a portfolio of infrastructure solutions, we do have a built-in baseline emissions calculator, and you can do it for different types of asset types. So if we're doing it for buildings because we want to look at maybe a recreation facility, or if you want to do it for your water utilities, you can either base your estimate, some of us Quebec, say we're looking at a recreation building, and the year here is based on the year you have data for specifically. So if this is not based on the year of construction, it's based on the year you're going to get your emissions for, and it's all based on the published data from the National Inventory Report. But you can find more information on that in data sources and methodologies. So I'm going to guess maybe we have a full year before COVID of, we want to look at before COVID or after COVID information, because we know that COVID impacted all of our energy usage, and it might not be representative of the usage at that facility. And then you have a choice to use actual or estimated energy usage. So if you already know, because you have your energy bill, what your usage is, you can put it here. But if you don't know, if you're not the energy manager, maybe you're a planner, maybe you're the rec supervisor, you just kind of want to look at something, you can estimate your emissions here just based on floor area. So say you're you say, I don't know, your facility, you've got some kind of small community facility or something that's I don't know, like I said, 1,000 square meters. I don't know how small that is and what you can do with that, but it'll give you the energy intensity that we're based on for your area, what the likely energy mix is based on where you are, and then what the approximate energy use, a balance of energy usage is between electricity and natural gas, and how much your annual emissions are. So that's kind of neat for that piece of equipment, right? That's really just based on a general building. If you would like more specific types of building or types of assets, you can kind of go through these, and you can add these to your, you can add another asset here, and then you can save the results here. If you go up here to sign in, you can make yourself a profile and save these results there, which is really helpful. So as you're filling out, we'll pop over to the CRIS registration page. And as you're filling out, whoops, I wanted to click on here, register a project. As you're filling out the information here, I'm just going to automatically populate it with all of my basic information. Toronto is not in Alberta, but that's okay. That's where I'm situated in Mistakis, so I'm in Alberta, but our head office is in Toronto. So I'll pretend it's me and my division. If you've completed a community action plan or strategy, so this is like if you've got net zero, how you're moving towards net zero or some of your own commitments, you can click here. Yes, we've got one, or no, we don't. If you have Dan referenced earlier, if you have an expert you're already working with, or you would like to find one, this is where you identify that here. And I'm just trying to go through this relatively quickly because I want to show you the next page where Climate Insight can help you justify your project or support your project goals. So we don't have an expert. We're going to, I'm assuming that if it's Dan and Mojali, then we can work in English or French. So move along. Oh, I forgot to choose the community, less than 35,000. There we go. And now we're going to move on to the next page, because here there's a box that says, please just provide a description of your project. So if we go back to our Climate Insight, we looked at a recreation facility where we want to look at reducing our mitigation or our emissions. We want to mitigate our emissions and reduce and work on an energy efficiency project, because we know that our emissions annually are 32 tons of carbon dioxide per year. This can kind of feed in, oops, that's the wrong one. This can kind of feed into this section here. We'd like to develop this project. So here we could put potentially a recreation center with high energy usage.
Goodness.
Right? Dan, what other details would we need to put in here that we could get for justification on this? Is that enough of a problem statement?
I'm lost, kind of lost, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was thinking, sorry, there's two Dans. There's Dan Savard and there's Dan Wassendorf.
Okay. Just a second, okay?
Yeah.
Kind of lost here.
Okay. Where are you lost, Danielle?
Well, I cannot even. I have a problem with my computer right now. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. Dan, you and I will touch base after.
I can hear you, but I cannot see. Okay. Put it that way.
It's okay. I was touching base with Dan Wassendorf, so of CUI. So it's okay. You don't need to answer a question right now, Dan Savard, about what kind of information goes in this box. So maybe I'll ask Dan to expand on what kind of information goes in this part of the registration form.
Yeah, the problem statement that we're looking for is something that would help us identify primarily what it is that you're hoping to get out of our project and out of the services. It helps us to make a match that aligns more closely with what our experts specialize in and what it is that you're looking to achieve. So the more specific you can be in this description, the better of a match we can make between you and one of our experts. But we're not a demand limited service, and that's why we call this a service request rather than an application. You don't need to provide an extreme amount of detail out of a worry that we won't accept your project for that reason. Ultimately, if you're meeting those minimum eligibility criteria, we're very happy to work with you to get you set up with some services. But some things that are very helpful for us are to know specifically how much work has been done to date on the project, if you're planning on applying for any specific funding in the future to support the capital funding aspect of the project, and also just any work done to date within your own teams, any reports that have been completed, any studies that have been done, and ultimately what the project objectives are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we know kind of the baseline for the 30 it's a recreation center with high energy usage and that emits 32 tons of carbon dioxide a year. So per Dan's explanation, if we have a bit more detail on how to use this information, we know this is kind of a high emission scenario. So we can go back to our solutions finder then and go down the options pathway. So again, I'm going to, if you just a side note, if you already have your own login and ID and identify your profile, then you don't have to answer these questions every time you go down. But we're back in Quebec under 5,000. This would automatically populate if you have. So now we understand a little bit more about the emissions level at our project, which is a recreation center potentially, unless Dan, you have an infrastructure project in your area that you'd like to more information on. Dan Savard.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Now I can see you back, guys.
Okay. So we're going to walk through this this example of a recreation facility and look for options in this pathway. So Dan Savard, would you identify Montjoli as northern or rural or remote?
It's rural.
It's rural,
And
yeah.
rural and probably remote.
Yeah. Is it more than an hour and a half from the next big city center?
No, it's rural.
Okay, so rural. And then I assume it's a community, it's a town, not an Indigenous community, correct?
You're right.
Okay, so we're going to continue. We did adaptation yesterday. Today we're doing mitigation. So we're going to follow this pathway. And we decided it's a rec center, which falls under a buildings and housing asset class. Potentially, Dan, do you already have a recreation facility in your community, or would we be in this situation? Would we be building a new one?
I don't know because I mean I don't work there yet. I mean I'm in the process with them.
So let's say that we have an existing facility, because then we'll answer a few more questions. And we're looking at, really upgrading, maybe it's an arena, because we know that even the small towns all over Canada tend to have a hockey arena. It's part of our national identity. So even the small town I went to school in here in rural Alberta didn't have a handful of houses and an arena. So let's call in our head, it's an arena. Maybe we need a retrofit for that arena. We know that it needs to be upgraded. Maybe we're just doing minor repairs or changes, or maybe we don't know how much work we're going to do. So we want to include all options for that facility. We'll just say all are unknown. And then if we can answer a few more questions to rank our infrastructure options. Now, this is a new release or a new function as of April this year. Originally, we just gave you a list of all the options that apply to your building. But now we can answer a few more questions to rank these options as to what are more applicable to your situation. So what we're going to do is we're going to say yes to this one. And an approximate budget for your project. Now, if we already have funding for this project, or even if you don't, or you just know that you have to go on operational cost, you can choose a category here. If you know that if you call the climate help desk and you know that there's an upcoming project to increase to provide funding for some recreational facilities or things like that, then maybe you could base this on you could base this estimate or this project on approximately how much money it will cost, if it's an estimate, or how much money you have available. So I'm going to choose a middle of the ground option here, just because it'll give all the options for this price and anything below that. And what are your organization's minimal useful life of an asset? So because this is an arena that we're thinking about here, we want our arenas to last at least 10 or 25 years, right? This isn't something that we want, that isn't going to last very long. So we want at least 25, maybe 50 years, because it's an arena that needs to last a long time. So I'm going to pick 25 because we want it to last a while. Do we have a mandate or requirement to implement green infrastructure or nature-based solutions? Now, we might think that nature-based solutions or green infrastructure doesn't apply to energy efficiency or mitigation. But what this selection will do is it'll prioritize some of the things that can offset or sequester carbon for your community. So if what you're looking at is some nature-based solutions to some green infrastructure, and you can't really reduce your energy usage at your facility, or maybe you can, but not by as much as you want, it'll also suggest some ways to offset or sequester carbon that may or may not be on site. So, and some of those projects also fall under the CRIS program as eligible projects, correct, Dan? Mm-hmm. So if those are higher priority projects, that's excellent. If you have a mandate to address multiple mitigation impacts, this is kind of, do you want to do energy efficiency and sequestration? That's kind of what this is. So I'm going to put yes on this one. And then do you have a mandate to implement low carbon resilience? Do you want to also look at some of the hazards that are there? So if not, if we only want to look at energy efficiency or carbon sequestration, we could just push no because we're only focused on that. I encourage everyone to look at projects that address their hazards and their impacts. But if you have a limited budget or limited direction from your council, then maybe you just need to focus on getting that arena, getting the energy bills on that arena down. This one to ask about what space is there, if that arena is on a tight urban environment, or if you've got a lot of area on the site to expand or to put projects on or options to install options. You can choose here if you don't really know, because this is a project that we've got. You can just include all of the options here, and then what it does is it gives you a list. So now we're at our list. We're done with our questions. It's giving you a ranked list of the options that could help. Oops, that can help mitigate. Am I back to? Can you see my results page? You're back to my results page. It gives you a list of options that may, based on the questions we just answered, that may align with your municipality's priorities. So this is the piece where if things in this green color, these probably align pretty well with the objectives of your municipality, but you'll have to review them really quickly to see, oh, well, can I put this into a recreation facility? Does this align with actually what our project looks like? Can we put a green roof on our facility? Can we change the management of the lawn or of the green space around it, around the facility? Because it might include some sports fields, things like that. Are we on a coast? Maybe we aren't. Are we going to restore some of the marshes in the area to offset because we can't reduce? We want to focus on natural areas and carbon sequestration. So, oh, sorry, my mouse is a little trigger happy right now. These ones in the green align really well with our, as you can see by this 80 and above relative relevance. That's what this circle is. These probably apply pretty well to your project, and then you can choose among those. The ones in blue here are a little less relevant based on the information that we provided, although they might be more relevant with a bit more information. So efficient HVAC systems is probably relevant on a rec facility. So with a bit more information, maybe some of these will apply. And then the ones in yellow at the bottom don't have enough information to say, yes, this is probably a good idea. If you have some information that makes these a better idea, you could take this whole, you can evaluate this whole list and save the list to your profile. So we marked at the top. Remember, I identified that you can sign in and create a profile. You can save this whole list as a profile. And the other thing you could do is share it. So you could copy the link of this list if you want to consider all of these solutions, and go back to your application form for CRIS and cut and paste the options. Say we'd like to consider these options, right? Oh, I can't type apparently. Follow these options, and you can cut that list right into there so that when you're matched with an expert, you're both referring to the same list of options and you're speaking the same language, and your expert knows how much you know about those options and how much effort you've been going into. So when you start your discussion, you can actually have that right away. The other thing you can do over here is if there's specific ones that you're looking at. So we want to look at solar district heating because you don't really know a lot about that, and maybe you can do that in your area. And you think, oh, that's really cool, I want to learn more about it. You click on it and it'll give you a description of how that works, of what it is, of how it works, some of the considerations in it, and go, oh, and if you get really excited and you're like, this is something I'd really like to look into and highlight and talk to an expert about to see if it actually, how I could apply this in my community, you can both save this card to your profile and copy the exact link, say this is actually one of the most interesting ones I want to talk about, and copy this link directly into your application form, right? And that way, when you're talking to your expert and match with your expert, you can get information specifically, and they know how much you know, and you have a good place to start. So once you've gone through and you've found your, kind of know what your area is and what your emissions are for that for your project, and you have a list of solutions that you could possibly investigate, you can finish filling out your application form here with some of this information about whether the project has council approval. I think you need to have council approval, or the council needs to actually have awareness or priority of it there. If it's included in a multi-year capital plan, maybe it is, or maybe it was promoted, or maybe it's going in the next capital plan. These are things that the experts need to know to help you walk through it, I think. Dan, right? Can you make comments on some of these eligibility requirements?
At this point in time, I cannot.
Okay.
I have to wait until I have my meeting with them tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. You and I will chat about that later. Dan Wassendorf, can you comment on how these eligibility requirements apply to the community of applicants?
Yeah, sure. So we're ultimately looking for whether a project has council approval or the project is in a multi-year capital plan or multi-year work plan. We just need one or the other to demonstrate to us that this is a real project that is going to be happening, and that the options that will be developed by the expert will be applied within a specific timeline. The projects don't need to be funded yet. We just need to know that they're a real project that's received approval from the local government, from the community.
And I just want to build on that, Dan. I want to provide a little bit more clarity. Now, the project itself doesn't have to be a climate-related project. Like, it can just be we're upgrading I just want to clarify. It can just be we're upgrading our arena and we're looking for ways to incorporate climate considerations in that, right? We don't know how to do that, and that's what the list is for. But the project itself does not have to be climate infrastructure. You know, it can just be we're retrofitting our arena. We're doing some upgrades on our arena. Can we integrate some climate stuff in there, and how can you support us doing that? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. And so that could include, maybe if we're focused just on mitigation, since we went over a lot of the adaptation projects yesterday, a lot of it focus by local governments with those smaller populations will be on finding ways to save money on energy spending, whether that's on electricity costs, heating oil costs, ultimately getting that energy efficiency improvements will save you money and support your local and the national climate change mitigation targets to get our emissions down. Yeah. So it doesn't need to start as a climate project. This can help you get a climate change lens integrated into existing projects.
Yeah. So you don't have to be a climate specialist. You just have to know that your piece of infrastructure, it needs upgrade, and use some of the information to support that. I knew a manager in Grand Prairie who never said the word climate, but got so many mitigation projects gone through by just using the words energy efficiency. So where we know we need to address climate is amazing, but in Alberta, sometimes that's where I'm from, sometimes it's a dirty word. So it's quite the nice thing about mitigation projects is that you can have goals for energy efficiency that will address your climate projects as well. So any information that shows formal prioritization, this is some of that other stuff that Dan was talking about. It hasn't got support, right? They just want to make sure it's a real project. So if you have a net zero plan, or if you have an energy efficiency plan that's been approved, maybe that might add to support your case for implementing things. Again, the same question as was in our solutions finder. What's your estimated value of your project that you want to work on? I think we picked something in this range. Which asset class is this project primarily focused on? We were doing a recreation facility, right? So it falls under buildings and facilities, but also probably under, do I see another section? That's where it falls under, I think, right? Yep. And then what climate hazards does your project address? We're not doing climate hazards right now. We are, unless we want to say extreme heat. But we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we're looking at building our energy efficiency. Maybe we're looking at renewable energy. Maybe that was one of the ones we wanted to look at. We can look at that. I think, and if we wanted to do carbon capture and storage, you wanted to put an offset or a natural solution to offset your emissions, you could pick that too, because those were all on our list of potential options, right? And Dan, I think you can pick as many as you like that you kind of want to look at and investigate, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I wanted to mention one thing as well about the project budget that was above the different options for asset class. This isn't the amount that the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service will be able to fund. Our projects are funding about $20,000 worth of work. This would be the amount of cost that the cost that you expect to spend on the project as a whole in capital costs.
That's right. So whether that's funded within your capital plan or whether you have called the climate help desk and they've told you that there are some infrastructure projects that can fund some of those that are coming out that will fund that capital project, whether you've got some really great financing programs in place with your partners or with your provincial governments as well. This is the capital cost of the project. So, and absolutely, that's where the Climate Help Desk can help you identify some of the programs that are coming out that can help you with some of those costs as well. Okay, so thanks for that, Dan. And here is where do you already have access to expertise on low carbon design and climate resilience? If you don't have anybody in house because your Montjoly has less than 5,000 people, then the answer is probably no. So that's what the program is going to help you with, right? Assign you with an expert to advise on that. Which departments are involved in this project? I'm going to guess community services because that's when I was in Okotoks. That's where our recreation kind of fell under. If your recreation facilities fall under public works, you could put it there. If you're the planner looking at the rec facility, then maybe it goes under somewhere else, but it's kind of what department you're involved in, I assume, Dan. And then any information on the groups that are involved or plan for this project. Maybe, Dan, you can comment on who goes in there. Dan Wasmandov. Yeah.
I'm sorry, which Dan are you talking about?
Dan W.
Okay.
You're on mute, Dan. That's what
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, you don't have to have any information in this section, but if there are any partners that you're planning on working with, or if you're applying on behalf of a particular community, for example, if you're an upper tier or regional government and you are facilitating this project for a smaller community that might not have the capacity to run this project themselves, you can enter information about how that collaboration will work there. The size of the team that will be working on the project is how many staff members internally will be working on the capital project down the line, not necessarily how many people will be working with our team on the CRIS project and developing that scope of work.
Okay, so if you had your recreation supervisor and your operations manager and your engineering department, maybe there's more than, well, if you're a small municipality under 5,000, you probably have less than 10 people total anyway working on the project. But if it's a bit bigger project and you have other people, then maybe you have more people, more support. What phase is the project currently at? Well, we just got ideas from Climate Insight, so I'm going to guess it's at either idea or concept. But if you actually are doing an upgrade on your facility and most of it's designed, you might be further down in this planning phase. And then if you're doing it pretty quickly, I'm assuming within the next year, or if you're doing it in part of your 5-year capital plan, maybe it's further down. But let's say we'll do it the next year because we're applying for the CRIS program now. Do you need to put in your construction start date here? It doesn't look like it's, if we don't know when that's going to start, you don't have to fill that out. Has any work been completed to date to assess climate-related risks to the project? So this could be yes or no. And this can be, if it's yes, you can either get a snapshot from Climate Insight to find out what some of your climate risks are. So you can watch the recording from yesterday's webinar or give me a call and I'll walk you through the adaptation piece. That's where you take some of that vulnerabilities from the mapping system and you can go through the adaptation side. So you could push yes for this. PyBC is also a tool that can be used to assess the vulnerability of your infrastructure to climate hazards. So if you've done that, that's amazing, and put that information in there. And if you've done any other work, you have a plan, you have strategies, you have other things, you can put that stuff in here. Partners. I'm taking all Dan's thunder and teaching you all about the registration, the page, but I just wanted to show how things are fed in. Other communities, this is that are involved. Oops. No, I'll just go like this because I've answered that question wrong and I flagged myself there. So choose your option. Oh, no, let's put no for now. And then we're going to the next page. You fill the rest of it out, you submit, and Dan's team takes a look at it.
Yeah, from that point, we'll review the service request, get in touch with you if we have any additional questions or need more clarification on anything that you included. But most of the time, people do a really good job on those submissions. And because we don't require an immense amount of detail, we just need those basic details. We'll reach out to schedule an intake meeting with you to learn more about your project, get any clarification on additional details. And then from there, we work to match you with one of our experts so that you can get some free support.
Yeah. And if you manage to, if you remember to create an account here, click on sign in and create an account, then when your expert calls you or when you're matched with your expert, you can make sure that all the work you did on Climate Insight is saved to your account. You can quick reference that when they give you a call, and they have the link too, so they can look at that list of options as well. Yeah. So hopefully you can see some benefit for your community as you apply for the CRIS program, and hopefully for this access to some of this information, or this gives you somewhere to start, so you can at least start on your CRIS application. And I think if there's any questions, I think we've got some time, a little bit of time to address that. But I'll stop sharing my screen here.
Thank you very much.
Feel free to put your hand up or type any questions in chat as well.
You're welcome, Daniel. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty quiet. I know it's a lot of information and a lot, and so and there's a lot of different functionalities in there. So get in there for the Climate Insight tool and poke around. You can rewatch this video. I think it's being recorded, so I think CRIS is going to post it on theirs, and then when we get that link, we will also be able to post it on our website. Both the CRIS and Climate Insight, everything is available in both languages, both official languages, so French or English. If you are on climateinsight.ca, you can switch easily to French. En français, c'est perspectiveclimatique.ca. So you can just go directly to that and have your account there. And I think Nathan had put my my contact information in the chat. But if you're going through Climate Insight and you see something that needs to that would be really helpful, Climate Insight is an iterative process. So we are releasing new functions and new content all of the time. Every 6 months, we've got a big new release for the next 4 years. So if there's anything missing, if you're working with the CRIS project and you're like, you know, it would have been really great if we had information on this, send us an email at info@climateinsight.ca. So I'll drop that in the chat also. For suggested improvements on content, functionality, ways to make this more applicable for the users that really need the support and the resources.
And if you'd like more information about the Climate Ready Infrastructure Service, feel free to reach out to us at climateready@canurb.org or visit our website, climatereadycanada.ca, where we have all of our information resources available in English and French. So thank you everybody for attending. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. But I hope you were able to learn something today, and we'll be able to visit the Climate Insight tool and send us a service request so we can get you some free support.
Yep. And if you'd like more training, contact us. If you'd like somebody to walk you through, or you have a bigger group that you'd like us to come and come and help you out with. I know CRIS and the CRIS program and Climate Insight, we do cross-country checkups for traveling all over. So if there's an event that that needs some support, or where we could reach a bunch of people who can use that in your area, let us know. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan.
For coming.